it's a great idea, but what do you think Steve Jobs said?
Just his glasses and his cardigan's like, yeah.
No, he said the same thing that Apple said to us. No! I am Teresa. Welcome to our weekend show of Cocoon Cast, where we deep dive into movies and discuss all things cinema.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. Today we'll be discussing in our Retro Rewind the U2 movie Rattle and Hum.
We also have some slap-happy news. Steven Spielberg has a new project that he's not directing. Rebecca, would this have anything to do with Chris Rock?
I'm not saying anything, but it is a rock and roll show.
Awesome. Let's get started.
Wildly unprepared for the success of their album and tour, The Joshua Tree, the members of U2 grapple with their changing identity in the music industry. To combat this identity crisis, they try to express themselves through the lenses of the music they first found themselves in, while still creating compositions unique to them.
Rebecca, let's talk about why we chose this movie, Rattle and Hum.
I was really excited after we saw the Carlos Santana movie and Stop Making Sense, so I kind of wanted to continue the trend with some of our favorite concert movies.
And would you say this is your favorite concert movie?
Total spoiler, this is my favorite concert movie.
Wow.
This is the concert movie I always have in my head whenever I'm comparing a concert movie to another one.
So this is your gold standard of concert movies?
This is, totally.
All right. Well, I'm biased. Clearly. U2 has been my favorite group since back in the day, early 80s, 83, 84, when I was a teenager. I obviously brainwashed you successfully that this is now your favorite concert movie. I was excited to actually review it because how many times have we seen this movie, talked about it, but not necessarily shared with our cinema community some of the little ins and outs, why we like it so much?
I was really excited to see you passionate about this. That's the other reason I pitched it.
About this. Well, it's not a hard pitch. You want to watch it? Sure. You want to talk about it? Sure. Want to share it on Cocoon Cast? Sure. But I do agree with you. I think it was a good choice given Stop Making Sense, the Carlos movie. It's a different genre of music. 1988 they recorded, and 87 is when they recorded.
You're going to make me pull out my fly shades, man.
I was going to say, and talk to our cinema community about what stood out for you. Obviously, the music is a big part of it.
One of the things that always really strikes me about this movie is the minimalism. It's not to the same level as Stop Making Sense, but it is pretty minimal for a rock and roll concert film. I know you and I had discussed that it was originally an independent project and then Paramount Pictures got involved and all of a sudden it just went...
Correct. In YouTube, from my understanding, they originally financed the movie themselves, and it was meant to be very small screening independent film, and obviously it's blown up and paved the way for the album, the Rattle and Hum album.
It's so weird to me looking back on this film, realizing that there was such a tremendous backlash to the fact that this film even existed.
That's amazing to me because so many good songs came from this. Guest appearances, obviously my favorite song, B.B. King.
Your favorite is Love Comes to Town, right?
Love Comes to Town is my favorite one on this album. And although they do play several songs from the Joshua Tree and even prior to that, right? Unforgettable Fire and obviously they go back, so it's not just this album that we're hearing songs from.
I'd like our cinema community also to comment below, what's your favorite song from this movie?
Yes.
Because this movie really takes the live performance up to another level for me.
Well, and I was laughing because you were talking about it's a minimal minimal stage, that sort of thing. And I laugh because that's really how concerts used to be.
And I'm just used to the genres where it's a show. I mean, there's like a storyline, there's like costume changes. It becomes this whole theatrical production.
Oh, a production. And some artists, to be fair, right? Some artists were a little bit more theatrical. I'm thinking of like Kiss and even Queen a little bit more. I'm thinking Van Halen back in the 80s. I mean, that's like a flashy performance. But I think that there's something great about the music stands on its own. And this movie, I agree with you, the photography or the cinematography was incredible.
I think the fact that good 95% of this movie being in black and white helps it so much.
I would agree with that.
Because one of the things I love about U2, and they often get accused of this, so I'm really speaking to a general audience here when I say this.
Sure.
The lyrics are considered so overly emotional that you can insert yourselves in them. But I like that. I like that YouTube becomes this experience where you can kind of use it as a piece for your own life.
I would agree with that. The lyrics are incredibly intense, and Bono primarily writes most of the songs, and they're not lightweight. We're talking about during the time of apartheid, talk about Remembrance Day, the bombing that happened literally, 2 hours before they were to go on
I believe
in
that's
Denver?
correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bono really comes into his own with this performance, and I think it's powerful because a lot of people prior to that point really accused U2 of being fence riders. Not really saying anything, positive or negative, just we're from Ireland, and they almost used it as a calling card. But I really think this became the moment that Bono really stepped up and said, no, this is what we stand for.
I find that fascinating because I remember my early introduction. A friend of mine, Debbie, really loved them. And, she had Irish background. So, of course, she loves all things U2. My brother loved U2. And for me, out of the gate, their lyrics were very intelligent.
Well, and then it's really interesting to me, when you introduced them to me, I was familiar lightly with their work. I didn't realize how big of a fan you were until we started getting into it. And you started saying, no, this band is impactful and iconic for all of these different reasons. And it was just interesting to see the way you and I parallel and also diverge in this case.
Well, and you've seen them live, correct, with
Yes.
us. And would you say their shows are quite spectacular now compared to what you saw with Rattle and Hum?
So I got really lucky to see them with you at the 360 tour.
Correct. I think that was the first time you've seen them.
I was surprised also how minimalist it was compared to the tour you had previously seen them, which was the Atomic Bomb tour, correct?
Correct. That sounds right.
And I'd seen video footage of that. It seems like with the 360 tour, they were trying to embrace the minimalism.
Kind of going back to the roots, going back to the history.
Yeah, and I think it's really fascinating to see. There's a line that gets repeated a lot in U2's bibliography is they're the last of the real rock bands. And I think this is almost like a step towards that journey. You and I were discussing specifically some of the songs and even some of the artistic choices kind of harken to a lot of their later work.
That is correct. Well, and it's funny, too, that you're talking about the controversy about the movie. This movie made money. It made, 8.6 million originally. The album sold and made 14 million. It's just interesting to me. I guess, you're talking about things that you're now aware of. I don't think I knew the controversy because in the circles that I run and the people that I know, we were super excited. I mean, I was, 18 when this movie came out? I was thrilled.
Well, as I was doing the research, I was just surprised to see, even Rolling Stone made the comment, something to the effect of, U2 thinks that they've hit this point where they can make this movie equating themselves. And I really didn't see that in this movie. I just saw a band trying to find themselves. Joshua Tree, I cannot overstate this enough, was a landmark event for this band. And even their prior albums had kind of slowly put them on the map, so to speak, kind of bumped up the ripples. Joshua Tree exploded, and I'm not using that for the Atomic Bomb reference, I swear. Joshua Tree exploded the band into the greater global consciousness. So you have a band that's struggling to deal with this fame, but also wonder who they are. Are they all just Joshua Tree clones? Is that the pinnacle of their success, or are they something else?
Well, and the longevity. And I laugh because I remember Joshua Tree when that came out, which I think it was Unforgettable Fire came prior to that, just by a few years. But I cracked up because that came out, and I remember I couldn't get enough of that. And it was everywhere. It was every bookstore. I remember even the Christian bookstores had it, you kind of walk by. They were selling it. Tower Records and all the local shops close to where I lived at the time, everyone was selling it. Everyone was talking about it. I remember I took a road trip and we were going to Colorado and Utah and everything. We were just, buzzing around. And I just remember I just played it over and over again. I just couldn't get enough of it. And to me, had that been the end of that, I would have understood, right? 17 or something at the time. It stops. Okay, understood. But they have the longevity, and I find it hilarious that you're listening to them now. You're enjoying this. And in the movie, it's a little bit of a documentary, but it's honestly a lot more music. compared to the Santana movie we reviewed just a few weeks ago.
But that's why I like this movie so much, is it's not only a musical glimpse of where the band is at this place in time, also a glimpse into a little bit of their psyche. It takes the element of their humanity and transposes it through these interviews throughout the process. And I think that gives me more of an appreciation for some of the things that they do.
Well, and as you were talking about, it takes them back to their history, right? The blues piece, the gospel piece. So you see their influences, and the gospel choir that sang Pride, I thought that was powerful. And I know you and I were talking about a good song can be played many different ways by many different artists, right? B.B. King's in this. Bob Dylan has a guest appearance in this, even though you don't really notice him too far.
This isn't the last time that the band has done this. They did an album recently, it's called Songs of Surrender, where they reinterpret multiple songs.
That's a good
over
example.
the course of their discography. What I like is this shows the band as they try to reinvent themselves.
It's interesting to say that they could continue to do this. Obviously, I'm a huge fan. I think the movie has aged really well considering 87 and we're in 2023 and we're still talking about it. Clearly, we're still excited about it and encouraging our cinema community to, watch it.
I'm also tremendously biased as a U2 fan. I'm not to the level Mom is, but I think that this gives a good example of a band showing its creative ethos, but also how it performs. It's the ultimate rockumentary for me. How do you show your artistic process, but also show how that translates on stage?
Do we have any questions from the box?
In this film, Bono talks about actually starting to become politically active and using the band's influence to make change. Do you think that served them well going forward?
I feel like it wouldn't be true to them as people if they weren't politically active. I know a lot of people kind of make fun of Bono for being like this one-man crusade out to save the world, but if you consider where the band comes from, I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner.
I agree. I think that there was some controversy. So I to me, they've always had this bend. The songs have always been deeper than just, no offense to the Beatles, but, She Loves You, yeah, yeah, yeah. Although I understand they became a little bit more embroiled over time. I think that's always been the story. I think more information came. He grew as a songwriter. It is interesting, though. I do wonder if we would still be talking about them to the same level had they not continued to grow.
Well, and the other thing is Edge's original lyrics for Sunday, Bloody Sunday are incredibly much more polarizing than the song that initially comes out.
That's interesting because Bono has a reputation as being, like you said, the man who wants to save the world.
And I think that like I said before, I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner.
Do we have any other questions from the box?
U2 as a band has very strong staying power. Their concerts are still huge. They still sell out. They have large tours. What do you think's their biggest quality that's allowed them to continue on and not fade away as so many other bands have?
I think it's their honesty. I think whatever is going on in Bono's life or Edge or Adam or Larry, you know about it because they'll throw themselves into their music. The most obvious example I can think of just off the top of my head is Edge's divorce. Mm-hmm. About 4 years prior to Ireland legalizing divorce, Edge writes this powerful song about how he just feels like he's losing his wife. Mm-hmm. And he can't do anything to rectify the situation for both of them. I think about Bono writing about his father and the distance that is felt in that, and that he feels like he's slipping away and he could never be the son his father wanted to be, even though they share a lot of the same feelings and just resonances.
Wow, I was thinking something a little less intense. I would say it's probably twofold in addition to what you're saying, which I think is well spoken. The twofold is one is I think each one is independently very talented.
I would wholeheartedly agree with this.
Right. We all point to Bono and go, wow. But Edge, Larry Mullins, Adam Clayton, each song you listen to, I hear the bass, I hear the drums, I hear the guitar, I hear the vocals. And to me, they're very strong. There's no one person who's bringing the others around or bringing them up to their level. The other thing I would say is they've continually reinvented themselves. There is iconic U2 sounds. I think most people could hear a U2 song and say, oh, that sounds like U2. However, I would say their continual reinventing of the music, doing different periods of music, I think keeps them relevant to generation of your, late 20s and me in my 50s, people in between, and obviously people older than us. Rebecca, it is that time of the show where we have singing, dancing,
Strumming.
Ooh, yes. Ooh,
another S word.
Strumming moths. And they're all looking at you, all 5 of them.
Oh, wow.
1 to 5.
This is really intense.
1 to 5. How would you rate Rattle and Hum?
This is my 4-star mockumentary.
Wow. Okay, number 1 reason for a 4.
It hits all the notes that I want to see in a rockumentary. I want to see how the band works. I want to get to know the people behind the band. I want to see how they perform. It just hits it so well. I only have one complaint about it, and it's a really minor complaint. I just wish it was a little bit longer and they went a little deeper in some of the segments.
Okay, so that's what's keeping you from a 5, it sounds like.
Yeah, it doesn't. There's some points where I'm like, okay, the movie's ended, it's over, and then they just keep going. I'm just like, okay, editing, come on, guys.
So you wish it were shorter, or I'm confused?
I wish it was more cohesive. I wish it was more of telling a story because it jumps between performances sometimes and then moments in between the performances. So I wish it was more fluid.
So back before jump cuts were a thing. This is a jump cut documentary.
To me, it feels like it is in some ways. It doesn't feel like this is the last show of the tour. Here's how we're ending the movie. Mm-hmm. It just feels like, oh, here's a random show here. And I'm just like,
I can appreciate that. All right, I'll give you that. Obviously, worth a watch.
Tremendously worth a watch, yes.
Okay. I think you already know my rating. 5 moths, no one left. No one left. Right. To me, it is the
no
gold
moth
standard.
left behind.
No moth left behind. And I loved Stop Making Sense, the Carlos documentary. I really enjoyed that one as well. But to me, this is a 5-star. The staying power, clearly the bias of the U2 songs. But I like different concerts. I like the different ways they played the song. Clearly, B.B. King, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Dad and I had seen him before. Bob Dylan made the appearance. It just is a really good film. And as you said, it brought them back into the spotlight, into the next chapter of their life. And to me, there is something very valuable about that.
If you enjoyed our review on Rattle and Hum, please like, which helps more viewers find our cinema community, and subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming reviews, and please share with your friends.
Rebecca, it is that time of the show where we talk about who we are not sponsored by today.
Who are we not sponsored by this week?
This week. Yes, this week. This week we are not sponsored by Apple.
Really? $1 billion company can't sponsor us.
Funny how that is, isn't it? And I thought Apple would be a great sponsor for today's show.
Talk to me about that. What made you think they'd be a good sponsor?
Well, who were we just talking about just a couple minutes ago?
U2.
U2 and Apple, buddies. They have quite the relationship. Back in the day, back in 2004, they were the first to come up with an ad for Apple. In fact, they actually approached Apple.
That's pretty gutsy.
Their manager, Paul, right, goes up to Steve Jobs and says, our boys, right, U2, our boys right in front of us, they want to work with you, Steve Jobs, but they want to get paid in Apple stock.
Oh, see, that's smart.
Well, no, it's actually... Hold that thought. No, it's a great idea, but what do you think Steve Jobs said?
Just his glasses and his cardigans, like, yeah.
No, he said the same thing that Apple said to us. No. And he said, nope, I'll take a pass on that. And I think you do recall this, that iPods were a thing. iPod Classics were a thing.
They were so a thing. It felt like you couldn't walk down the street without an iPod.
I think that's true. And originally they came in the black and the white, of course. Right? Sounds like an Apple product. But U2, they, with partnership with U2, right, they had come together with this nice little agreement. They actually had a black and red one, and all of the band, all of their signatures were engraved on this iPod.
I remember hearing a little bit about this years later because I tried to find one for you for Christmas one year, and I was reminded that we are not an Apple household.
Oh. I don't think I reminded you of such things. My first laptop was actually an Apple.
That's fun. I did not know that.
And you too. I would have been happy with that. However, they then added, and I think you know this, the songs. You want to talk about this?
So there was a really big controversy that Apple was paid $100 million to release U2's then newest album, Songs of Innocence, to all of their iTunes users.
And that's what, 500 million iTunes users at that time?
That's my understanding as well. Mm-hmm. To say it didn't go over well is kind of an understatement.
And that was 2014, correct?
That's correct.
Well, my understanding was people complained so much that they actually said, please remove.
I remember it was trending on Twitter for the day. It was so... What?
Well, and I'm thinking, right, they love you too. Clearly. I mean, they have a special iPod just for them. And you would think that Apple would say, oh my goodness, they're talking about Rattle and Hum. They're talking about all of our products. We like their product. Do you think that they would choose to sponsor us?
See, if I was us, I'd say yes, but I'm totally biased as a U2 fan and also a Cocoon Cast fan.
Correct. So as an Apple executive, because Steve Jobs is no longer with us.
One for me and one for my husband.
You would think Steve Jobs liked him, U2 liked him, and you would think they would say, of course we're going to sponsor you. What do you think they said?
Well, they're on a segment for a reason, right?
They're on, right. We didn't even ask for stock, and they said no. It was like, just, hey, a couple of products, smiley little face. We're happy to make you look good. We don't even need stock. We will not play the Bono card. We do not need stock, and yet...
Nothing pro bono.
Pro bono. Thanks, Apple. Thanks for not sponsoring us. If you have seen Rattle and Hum and want to share a review with a friend but don't want to share the whole show, head over to our companion channel, Cocoon Cast Clips, where we take this show and cut it up into bite-sized clips. Perfect when you're short on time or just want to share a snack-sized review with your cinema community.
It's that time in the show where we want to hear from you, our cinema community. We'd love to see you standing outside your favorite movie theater with your cinema community. Please send your photo to hello@cocooncast.com. Be sure to tell us who you are, what movie you're going to see, so you can show our community your cinema spirit. So, Teresa, I hear we've got some cool comments this week.
First up, we have Mindy Kronberg 3318, who commented on our earlier review of Jules. Here's what she said. Loved it, low-key, humorous, touching, entertaining, presented the elderly in a poignant but very dignified way. I agree with that. I enjoyed that movie with Ben Kingsley and Jane Curtin. Obviously, actors and actresses, a little bit older, they're aging. But to me, that movie was very smart. And I appreciated the comment that how much she loved it, which is great. But also that it was a low key, it wasn't ha 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 ha. It was a really smart movie. So obviously, I agree. I enjoyed the movie as well.
Next, we had Harukazu comment on a review of Stop Making Sense. Here's what they had to say. I did, and I loved it. Favorite song? All of them. I agree with Harukazu. I think that Stop Making Sense is really fun just as a Talking Heads fan, but every song gets its own spotlight moment, so it's really difficult to choose which song's your favorite.
I agree. Next up, we have Jet Car Dude commented on a review of The Retirement Plan. Here's what he had to say. Nick never disappoints. Nicolas Cage. We have a Nicolas Cage fan. And the box replied, oh, the box is commenting.
Yay!
And the box says, oh, the box mirrors the same thing. It says, if Nick is in it, I am going to see it. Wow. Nicolas Cage, staying power. That was quite a movie. I know our review was a little less favorable. However, I do agree that that actually pulled me into believing that, hey, Nicolas Cage is in it. It's going to be a good movie.
Finally, Big Tony Style commented on a review of A Haunting in Venice, and here's what he had to say. I didn't even know how Haunting in Venice flew under my radar. I think I just assumed they were done with the series following the unfortunate box office showing for Death on the Nile, but I'll have to check this one out. This is one of the films that I've been constantly recommending to people on the street when they ask me, hey, what movie should I go see? It's that and Jules. I really think that this one is not one to be missed, especially considering it's the start of spooky season.
I would agree with that. And I laugh because I understand movies flying under the radar. A lot of great movies are coming out right now.
That's why we're here for. So please keep your eyes and ears tuned to Cocoon Cast for all the latest.
Right. Absolutely right. Thanks for all the comments, and please keep them coming. We do reply to each personally, and we want to build the cinema community with great opinions, even if they're different from ours.
Steven Spielberg is coming back to Hollywood as a producer.
An executive producer, as he has been in the past.
Guess what he's producing?
Oh, I'm afraid. The man does dinosaurs, historical. Oh, my goodness. Who's on Malibu Beach this week?
Ah, I see you've been watching Barbie again.
Well, yeah. Poor Don.
So it's a biopic. He's producing a biopic, but you'll never guess who's directing it.
Oh, my goodness. All right.
I'll give you a hint.
Tell us. No.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm
laughing. I'm thinking you're kidding about this. So, Chris Rock?
Chris Rock.
He's directing.
Yes.
What is he directing?
He's directing a Martin Luther King biopic.
You say that with minimal confidence. Before we think you're just being silly over here, where are you reading this from?
I actually got the news alert from Deadline Thursday morning.
Whoa.
And I knew as soon as I saw Mike Fleming Jr.'s name in the author's line, we had to put this in the show.
So this is brand new news.
This is brand new, breaking as of Thursday morning.
And who's producing this or releasing this movie?
It's Steven Spielberg. He's bringing along Amblin Partners. I guess you could say they're ambling along.
Wow.
And
yes.
Universal Studios also has a significant stake in this film as well.
I don't even know what to say to this. And Chris Rock, love him or hate him, he is funny. At least some people think he's funny.
Some people
Will
don't
Smith
think he's funny.
Excluded. And he really, grabbed some, attention based on his previous choices of humor.
Well, keep in mind my perspective. I know Chris has directed a few films. They are comedic, but he's also done some production work. The last film I remember him producing, you're going to laugh at this.
I don't even know.
The last film I remember him producing is a spin-off from the Saw series.
Whoa.
He also starred in it too.
In Saw?
It's called Spiral. It's like
it's like a spiral saw.
No, because the spirals are a recurring visual motif in the series.
I get it. I'm thinking a spiral saw. Yeah, no. Okay.
I didn't even make that connection. Thanks.
Well, yeah, right. Wow. And it's interesting because I've heard Chris Rock speak in some of his interviews. He's, lots of language and then he gets to the point. However, I do think he's a pretty smart guy. I think he has some compassion, and I would just find this curious to hear about the impact that Martin Luther King had on him. Understanding if this is the movie that he wants to make, my understanding is there's a story that he wants to tell.
Well, it helps that this is based off of one of the most iconic biographies for Martin Luther King.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, and I've read a few biographies. I remember the last one I read was yay thick. I'm wondering if that's what it's based off of, other than just, his, snippet, if it's actually based on an actual book.
I believe it is. I believe it's MLK A Life. I believe that's the book that they're basing this one off of.
I'm just blown away. I always think of Spielberg, and no, I understand he's been taking less directing roles. He's been doing more executive producing. And
he's definitely changing himself into that mentor figure. I think that Martin Scorsese has been trying to as well.
Well, and even back in the day, Spielberg's name was attached to, I know, Color Purple that's coming out soon. He's attached to that, and he was attached to the original. And he has done producing. It's just Chris Rock and directing go like this to me. And then Chris Rock and Spielberg do this to me. I'm just trying to visualize it. I'm still in shock. I'm still thinking.
I'm just trying to tell myself, the little 7-year-old me, that Marty, aka the zebra from Madagascar, is directing a serious biopic on Chris Rock. Try to reconcile that.
Well, I'm hoping he does a great job.
Me too.
I have no ill will, or I'm not like, uh-oh, and I know the controversy that he's stepped into recently. However, I think it's a great idea. I'm just wondering what the end product looks like. But as you said, as Spielberg as a mentor, he'll probably be able to help shape that and going with somebody who's a little bit more unconventional, that could be a good work.
Well, and we talked about this in our Rattle and Hum review.
Yes.
Reinvention seems to be the hallmark of being an artist. And I think it's kind of cool that Chris Rock is taking this on. Now, I will confess, I am a bit nervous. I'm excited to see where this goes, just from an artistic enjoyment perspective, because you never know. He might surprise us all.
Do we have any questions from the box?
Do you think the public's going to be able to get over Chris Rock's persona as a comedian and give him a chance to be a series director?
I think it's going to take some serious convincing. The public knows this man for almost exclusively his comedic work. His documentary, Good Hair, is only known basically by hardcore documentary fans and people who are invested in that corner of the community.
And we've seen that.
Yes, but we're hardcore documentary people.
All right, that's fair. That there is some serious work that he's done and work that's close to his heart. But we've seen comedic actors like Jim Carrey, for example, go serious.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And that's just one example. So I do believe that he could do it. But that's an interesting question from the box. Can the public as a whole, can they suspend that? In my mind, I can, once I get past the fact. It's not even a doubt. It's just the really fact.
Teresa, I know we saw a trailer for this movie, but did you hear that the film Saltburn is already the center of controversy?
Holy moly, we just saw a trailer that fast. That was just a few hours ago. What happened?
The London Film Festival presented Saltburn, but there was a protest.
And who was protesting?
It was a small group of 30 UK film production workers. They're really angry that the industry over there, and especially internationally, is really reliant on America, and they want more jobs locally.
Oh, interesting. And that's what the strike was for.
Well, the protest. Yes.
The protest. I'm sorry.
You're on strike brain.
I'm on strike brain. It's been so long. Okay. And it's actually just a protest.
Yes.
Well, and 30 people outside the festival.
Yes.
Wow. And did they do anything significant? Obviously, they're making a point and we're reading about them. And what Hollywood Reporter is reporting on this?
That's correct. Alex Rittman brought us the story.
All right. And what are your thoughts about that?
I was surprised how respectful this protest is, given how protests have been absolutely zany in the last couple years.
Well, and I think it's great that 30 people, we could say 30 people, that's like a small potluck or something. But I would say, I think it's great that it's making the news because it's a, how do we say this? It's a reasonable reason to protest and to call attention to this.
The other interesting thing is because SAG-AFTRA is still on strike.
Yes.
All the actors and actresses, their publicity is not covering this. So this is a perfect time for this, especially considering that Saltburn is directly correlated to Warner Brothers and Amazon.
Now, when is Saltburn? Do you recall when that movie is going to be released? Because as we were saying, that we saw the trailer tonight earlier, and we've seen the trailer, a few times, I think, at this point?
The film is expected to be released in our neck of the woods on November 17th.
Okay, so it's about another month or so away, a little over that. Do we have any questions from the box?
Do you think there's some irony when you try to say we want more people over here to have these jobs and only 30 people show up? Like maybe there's not enough people to fill those jobs?
I do see what you're saying, Box. I don't think it's an irony. I think it's putting ourselves out there. The film industry as a whole is relatively small, so you don't want to burn any bridges you can.
That would be true.
Unless you have a good cause. And I respect the 30 people that stuck their necks out for their cause to come to the film festival and say, this is what we want.
Well, and if we think about, is it only 30 people because only 30 people showed up, or do we think 30 people representing how many other people? I would say probably the 30 aren't representing 3,000 people. That may be a bit much. However, I think 30 probably means maybe closer to 100, if not more. Thanks for joining this week. We're always excited to create experiences to bring our cinema community together.
Next week, we are excited to be reviewing She Came to Me, and we will also be reviewing The Killing Room. On our Movies and More weekly show, in keeping with the 3 music movies we've recently reviewed, we will be reviewing the Taylor Swift movie concert.
Please remember to like, subscribe, and to share our channel.
If you enjoyed this show, you might check out last week where we reviewed the music rockumentary Carlos. And on our Movies and More weekly show, we reviewed the Retro Rewind re-release of Stop Making Sense.
Remember, cinema community movies are
Better together.
Thanks for watching. See you soon.